The reason so many marketing companies are failing to implement AI is very, in my opinion, is very behavior based. Because in the beginning, AI was offered as a consumer-based tool. Here's a generative pre-trained model such as ChatGPT. Ask it a long-form question, give it an answer. Ask it to write a document for you, it gave it to you. What they didn't fundamentally understand is, how do I build private AI? How do I build sovereign intelligence for my organization so that my organization can leverage AI infrastructure to then stay relevant in the market? Well, to do that, you've got to build and start from day one by actively going and saying, okay, do we have a knowledge base of all the organizational and institutional knowledge within our enterprise that is in a foundational set that everyone has access to? If not, we've got to get that organized so that our private AI can consume it and understand how we speak, how we go to market, how we market our products and services to the outside world, and how we do research. How do we best represent ourselves? How do we keep ourselves private, secure? All those things that an organization needs, right? From that knowledge base, then create a knowledge graph. A knowledge graph, think about it as the connected tissue across all of your institutional knowledge and platforms. And of that connected tissue, how do you then leverage it to then connect to your architecture? Well, to do that, we introduce a term called retrieval augmented generation, RAG architecture. Well, a new term we call graph RAG. So it's a graph knowledge base, or a knowledge graph connected to RAG architecture within a private sovereign intelligent engine, which ultimately is becoming an AI first native company. Is by when you have all that connected tissue together, that's what makes this work. And so what I often think about to best explain this, go back. I'm internet old. I can go back into 1996 when I first got onto Windows 95 and started building file systems and architecture and learning, how do I store files in my documents and how do I connect across different shared drives? Well, that same institutional knowledge is really needed today to best understand, how do you get the knowledge of what's between the ears of every resource within an organization so that it's structured so not only can humans learn from that knowledge, but machines can also leverage that knowledge. And so the biggest gap we're missing today is most organizations just do not have fundamentally the documentation needed to support a private AI. And so that's the process they're having to go through. They have to document it. And I'll say another little bit here, is the reason why most organizations, I believe, don't have a fundamental knowledge base or knowledge graph is because of behavior. In 2012, the dawn of SaaS companies, we invested all of our time and energy in writing source code because we were going after, how do we build SaaS models that look at monthly subscribers, weekly subscribers, daily subscribers? Well, that we invested all of our time in documenting source code and very little time in documenting how do our people within an organization perform business activities, perform business processes. We now have to go back to that. And we have to document things really well for an organization to stay relevant so that anyone in the organization can ask the private AI a question. How do we do XYZ process? And it'll give it an answer. Well, that's the methodology we have to go through. And in Incubeta, we specialize in helping organizations build knowledge bases, knowledge graph, and get to graph RAG architecture and even advanced graph RAG architecture to build private AI, which then supports business models and information and peoples and processes across the entire organization.
I would say, just listening to that, that might sound scary. That might sound like a lot. What would you say to those people there?
Now, if that sounds scary, it's really quite simple. Pick up your laptop, open it up, and look at your desktop. If you've got a bunch of scattered files everywhere, that's the gap right there. Organize those files into a taxonomy that an AI infrastructure can read and understand. It's that simple. Take organized chaos into something, or take chaos and organize it into a file system. It's as simple as that. So you've got to go and say, how do we organize our files? How do we organize all of our data across our data warehouse? And then how do we build our connected tissue so it talks to each other? That's the process.